up inside of a minute. And then Flitter was scared. Flitter believed most ponies were stupid. It was the core of her philosophy. It was the heart of her existence, and in the case of Ponyville's one and only actual veterinarian, a pony she'd never encountered before, she happened to be right.
I don't treat possums,
the stallion told her. Flitter stared at him.
This is my cat,
she told him, briefly at an unaccustomed loss for any more insulting words.
You can see she's a cat. Any pony can tell she's a cat.
With a tail that long? That's a possum.
Flitter glanced at the diploma on the wall. It was in a language she couldn't read and had been granted in a country she'd never heard of, the latter of which took some major work. Back to the supposed vet.
She's a cat. She's sick. She won't eat. All she does is drink and piss. She doesn't play as much anymore. She doesn't want her kills from the hunt.
The vet's shudder didn't make her feel as good as it usually would have.
And she barely purrs. The only thing she cares about is her water bowl, and she's not even making it to her litter box. Is that enough for you to start working on a diagnosis?
The stallion blinked several times.
A diagnosis?
Yes.
What does that word mean?
This time, Flitter's stare actually drove him into a corner.
What kind of vet are you? How do you even stay in business? How many bits are your parents sending you every moon so you can pretend to be the real thing?
The stallion's chest proudly puffed out.
2,000.
Flitter blinked.
And I get to write out prescriptions and everything,
he declared after several seconds of additional thought.
Some of them I can even,
He seemed to come back to himself, or at least as close as he ever came, and then looked at Connie again, who was lying flat on the examining table, not interested in much of anything.
Anyway, no possums. I don't work with them. Or baby ponies who breathe fire and turn out to be dragons. That's just not my specialty.
The words died in Flitter's throat, mostly due to overcrowding within the battle to escape. She looked at another posted diploma in order to buy time for the internal war to produce a truly offensive survivor. This diploma was legible. It also seemed legitimate, and the name...
You're not a mare.
The stallion blinked.
I'm not? Oh, right, I'm not. You're looking at the diploma for Sweetbark. She's on vacation. I'm filling in for her.
He proudly nodded towards the incomprehensible piece of non-parchment.
That one's mine. I brought it with me.
Flitter ground her teeth, mostly as a warm-up exercise.
And what do you do?
Me, I treat baby ponies. Well, I would if any pony brought me any. Mostly they all wind up at the hospital. The last one I saw breathed fire. But I figured animals, ponies, it's all the same, right? And I haven't seen any pony in my office for moons. Plus, Sweetbark said anything important would just wind up somewhere else anyway, so I couldn't possibly do any damage.
One very long polysyllabic word, one. Flitter used it, dumbing it down enough for the stallion to understand just how strongly she was insulting him. It took most of an hour. And that left her doing something she hated, something Flitter only would have done for Connie. Most ponies could smell the cottage long before they saw it. The odor wasn't strong, just drifting and effectively permanent. The lone pony resident managed to keep it all off her body by what was probably classified as heroic measures by those prone to misuse the word. But the building and grounds themselves were within a permanent olfactory zone of the stuff. Dozens of animal species producing dozens of feces drops and urine sprays. You could scrub forever, and it would never completely go away. It wasn't harsh by any means, but it was always present, and it never dropped into background awareness. A toucan stared at her as she flew towards the front door. 2 flamingos blinked in vaguely confused ways. Several mice scattered as they picked up on the scent coming from her special traveling left saddlebag. Normally, she would have had to order Connie not to stalk because some ponies could get really upset when something with an owner was attacked, or even something which was just waiting for one. But her cat wasn't interested in that kind of activity right now, or much of anything else. Flitter touched down, brought up her left hook to knock, then decided that would have been the ultimate indignity and just pushed at the door. It swung open and she angrily trotted through, making the yellow Pegasus, who was feeding the chipmunks in the center of the living room, jump. It was the only good moment Flitter had experienced in days. She reached into her special saddlebag with her teeth, gently brought Connie out by the scruff of the cat's neck, tasted the fur as several shed hairs came off on her tongue.
She's sick. Do something.
The ridiculously shy, barely Pegasus slowly trotted over. Connie looked up from her slumped position, a seemingly boneless spread of feline on the floor. Several small animals approached, sniffed at her. The cat didn't bother to move. The yellow pony made an odd sound, one which was almost 3/4 of the way to a meow. Connie's mouth opened, and the noise which emerged was filled with rust. Fluttershy looked directly at Flitter.
Tell me.
Fluttershy listened. She was good at that. Flitter supposed you had to be good at listening when nearly every sound in the world scared you, and careful attention had to be paid in order to find out if any of them were approaching. And sometimes she would ask questions, which Flitter answered as carefully as she could, while keeping her usual job out of the way, no matter how hard it was not to be irritated by Fluttershy's stupid voice. Flitter truly disliked Fluttershy's voice. It wasn't just the stupid softness which could make the Pegasus so hard to hear, or the slight vibration which often intruded, the sound of tears being held back with an effort which could break at any second. It was the way sentences seemed to fade in and out, that hesitation before speech began or continued, as if every bit of strength possessed had to be summoned in order for speech to take place at all. It got on Flitter's stressed nerves, and it never stopped.
Is that all of it?
Flitter was just barely restraining herself from snapping.
That's everything I've seen. You're supposed to be the big animal expert with your mark.
The freak mark, the talent which a Pegasus should never have manifested.
What's wrong with her?
I could be wrong.
So naturally, she has to cover her own rump before she does anything. Like that giant spread of a tail doesn't do it already.
And I wish I was. But I'm sure it's diabetes.
I don't know what that is.
Her teeth were grinding again. It felt as if her bow was beginning to slip.
It's a disease.
I know that!
It was all she could take, and it pleased her to see the shout sent Fluttershy shrinking, the yellow Pegasus seeming to withdraw into her own withers.
I know she's sick. I figured that out by myself without any mark. What's the cure?
The answering words were a squeak, too high and fast to hear. Flitter's lips pulled back, and Fluttershy became even smaller.
The vet is out of town. The replacement is an idiot, and she can't be that good herself, or ponies wouldn't keep coming to some pony who never even went to the stupid school. You're all there is. Tell me!
Just at the edge of hearing, the softest tones it would have been possible to pick up at all.
There is no cure.
Flitter's back legs went out from under her. She sat down hard, and a small white rabbit scurried away just in time. She felt it kick her before running into another room. She just barely felt it. She disliked the rabbit. Every pony in town disliked that rabbit, and that was the absolute minimum. But now she felt she could actually come to hate it. And as for its supposed mistress...
Fine. There's no cure. What's the treatment?
She gritted out. Fluttershy's blue-green eyes darted around, looked at the other animals in the room, and Flitter noticed that all those animals seemed to be a lot closer now. They were starting to form a circle. They were closing in on the intruder.
No, she's allowed to be. Please, leave her alone.
The yellow Pegasus said. And they backed off. Flitter told herself she was only exhaling because it was a necessary part of breathing, then looked at Fluttershy, who had sunk down next to Carney. One weak yellow wing had stretched out and was gently stroking the cat. Her cat. Fluttershy had no right to do that.
The treatment. Tell me.
Flitter hissed.
I have to confirm. I have to know it's diabetes. I'm sure, but if there's a chance I'm wrong...
Trembling now, weak and useless, but the only resort Flitter had, without losing another day to travel.
I have to know. There's a test. I have to take some of her blood. Just a few drops. It won't hurt very much, I promise.
Flitter turned away, all the better to glare at the temporarily retreated animals.
Don't you dare hurt her.
She told the air.
No more than you absolutely have to.
It's just a few drops.
So do it already.
She didn't watch. The tiny mew of protest told her when it happened, and the soft words which Fluttershy had no right to whisper into her cat's ears made that stop. The yellow Pegasus left the room, came back. Flitter had no idea how much time had passed in between.
It is diabetes. And Flitter...
Had Fluttershy ever used her name before? She was surprised the non-vet even knew it. There should have been no right to speak it now. Not in that tone. Concern and sorrow wrapped up together.
There's no treatment.
Flitter slowly turned back to face Fluttershy. The yellow Pegasus trembled again, but stayed where she was, not giving up any of her so precious ground. Carney made a small sound. It could have been a mew, or would have been from a cat who'd been able to eat.
What do you mean? It's an improvement, darling. Treatment.
It was a whisper, but it projected. It still seemed to make more sound than Fluttershy could manage on her best day.
It's a disease, so there isn't a cure. There has to be something you can give her where she just lives with it.
It's been around for a while. She's had it for some time. She might have been born with a predisposition towards it, or it's a fault in the blood. We're still trying to learn about how it spreads or if it even does. It just got to the point where it was visible. Cats can live for years before it manifests, but most of them don't. She only got as far as she did because you've been feeding her so well. I can tell how she was eating before it really started. I can see how beautiful her fur is. You have to really love a friend to take care of them like that.
Fluttershy was trying to praise her, imply she'd bought Carney moons of time. Flitter didn't want to hear it. Any of it.
So there's no proven treatment. What's the experimental stuff? There's always experimental stuff. What does the disease do?
There are ponies working on it, but there isn't anything. Not that it won't do it faster.
Do what?
Animals started, but did not close in. Pictures vibrated in their frames. Fluttershy took a slow breath, and the words which followed it came out immediately.
Flitter.
Don't say my name. Don't act like you care, you stupid failure of a freak.
It's fatal.
The words fell between them. Flitter found her wings flaring out, her hooves scraping at the ground as her nostrils widened and her head lowered, fought the urge to charge.
Say that again. Lie to my face one more time just to try and make me feel sick, you bucking horse apple smear.
It's fatal. She's just going to drink more. She won't eat. You can try to force food into her mouth and she won't swallow. She'll just throw it up after. Her body will start to shut down. This is moving fast. She has days, Flitter, and those won't be days you want any pony you love to go through. She's just going to suffer. She's starting to really suffer now, and the days she has aren't days you'll want to remember. Time you want her to have her last under sun.
You can't be saying this. You can't stop talking.
You have to think about mercy.
She still wanted to charge. She didn't want to fight it, but the words had come first, and she was delighted to see everyone hitting Fluttershy harder than the impact of a pony ever
It needs
could.
to be about 20% cooler.
You sick piece of... You want to kill her, don't you? You saw me not cheering you in your stupid 2.3, and you saw my lips just moving, and now you want your revenge? Your soft little whispery revenge through killing the only thing that... How much meat does your crew need? How many pets do you talk ponies into letting you kill just to save on the bills?
A deep breath, and she let what she saw to be, prayed would be, the fatal blow fly.
How many friends have you murdered?
And on the smallest waft of breath,
499.
there had been no hesitation. There had been no measurable delay to the answer at all. There had only been a number. Flitter felt sicker than she ever had in her life.
You keep count?
I have to remember their names.
You sick!
It
needs to be
was
about
the
20%
only word
cooler.
she had. It wasn't strong enough, but it was hurting the yellow never should have been. She could see how much it hurt. And Fluttershy deserved all of it and more. 499 times over. And it still wasn't enough. Flitter charged. The horde descended. She heard it even as she saw Fluttershy go up, as Flitter slammed into the wall behind where her target had been, slumped to the floor as the dizziness from impact began to close in. She'd forgotten Fluttershy had even that most basic capability, could barely think of her as a Pegasus at all, and the most basic of dodges brought time for the rush of so many smaller wings to reach her ears, the clicking of clawed feet moving over wood. So many of those sounds, dozens, they would fall on her and overwhelm in the crush of tiny bodies, and she would die from the blood loss of 1,000 little bites, and the sickness she couldn't reach would have a new source of meat for those meals.
Stop!
Flitter almost expected the shout to have come from her own throat, but it had been the only other pony voice in the room, a voice which couldn't be that loud. But they stopped.
Improvement, darling.
They all stopped.
She can be angry. She has every right. This is the time for anger. So let her be angry.
The animals gazed at her, hundreds of bright eyes holding on a single word, or order.
She won't hurt me.
Fluttershy said, voice dropping closer to her normal lack of volume.
It won't happen. Just go out of the room for a little while. Please? It just has to be me and her with Carney.
How does she even know Carney's name?
More wings, more clicking, but all moving away. And then there were soft feathers brushing up against her forehead.
You're hurt. You went into the wall too hard. But it's not serious. You'll just have a bruise. I can give you something for the pain.
Don't touch me!
Flitter panted.
Don't you ever!
All right.
Fluttershy withdrew, went to the couch and waited. After a minute, Flitter was able to stand again and slowly trotted over to Carney, who hadn't moved during the charge. She hadn't tried to defend Flitter. The strength hadn't been there. And Flitter had vaulted her own cat on the way to attack. Flitter stood over Carney now, guarding.
You're telling me there is no treatment? Not even anything experimental. And the disease is fatal.
Fluttershy nodded just once.
And she's going to suffer.
Again.
What would a real vet say?
That got a small flinch.
Sweetbark would say the same thing after she did the blood test. She'll be home in 4 days. But that's 4 days. 4 horrible days. And then she would send you to me.
Which got Flitter to blink.
What?
She always does. I wish she didn't. I wish she would just do her job. But it's me. It's always me. She knows that I'm here and it's always me, just so she won't have to.
There was another tiny, almost mew. Flitter looked at her cat. The cat who wouldn't eat.
Any vet would do the test.
Fluttershy whispered.
You could go to Canterlot. That's faster than waiting for Sweetbark. But it'll always come out the same. And they'll say it. That it's better to...
She couldn't go on. The weakest pony in the world almost collapsed under the weight of unspoken words. And then continued anyway.
Let go. Look at her, Flitter. She's so weak, and it'll only get worse. If you watch her for all of those days, you'll remember. Those memories will become stronger. Sometimes they could get stronger than any other memory you have of her. For some ponies who won't let go, they have to watch every minute as they try to take care of their friend and nothing works. And those memories become the only way they remember their friend at all. That's not who she is. You love her. I know you do. I can see it in the way you're trying to protect her. But every minute she has left under sun will become agony. The Shadowlands, no pain. It hurts to let go. It hurts to send them. I hate it so much.
A single tear fell, then gained company.
But it's a cycle, even when it turns too soon. It's my job. She won't hurt anymore. She won't hurt when I show her the way. It never does, I promise. It's the end of pain.
Starkly, the only words Flitter had.
It's the end of life!
Yes.
And you've killed 499 other times?
20% cooler.
I've been here for years. I left school. I came down so early. Sweetbark. She thinks that if she never does it, ponies will keep going to her. They won't associate her with the end. Only with life. Only with success. Everything fatal. Even when she's in town, it goes to me. And every pony knows it somehow. They won't even go into her office anymore if they think it's bad. Only me. And it never stops hurting. 499, Flitter. I keep count. Because I feel like every time takes something away from me.
It needs to be about
And I don't know how much I
cooler.
have to give anymore. I remember their names because...
The tears were falling faster, the fabric of the couch becoming water-stained. No, old stains taking on still more salt.
When my part of the cycle ends, when I go to the Shadowlands, some pony will ask me why, on every single name. And I'll have to remember every last one, explain why it was the only option left. And then maybe I'll see them. And if they don't hate me, as much as I hate myself...
Flitter would never remember picking Carney up, scooping her back to the saddlebag, could never admit to fleeing. All she knew was that when her vision cleared again, when memory chose to record again, she was outside and nearly a fifth of the way back to Canterlot.
Lying sociopath looking for a nice round number. Element of sickness. Any real vet will...
Let's move, move, move!
The first real vet told her it was diabetes. The second agreed it was fatal and would be so within days. The third did not praise her for keeping the onset away for so long. The fourth had what looked to be a home-printed diploma and offered her faintly glowing green capsules, which she recognized as an illegal drug taken by Pegasi, who wanted to boost their flight speed exactly once, because once was all they would probably live long enough for. What happened after that didn't make her feel any better, nor did the praise heaped on her by the solar gods as she flew away. There was a certain patch of cloud that Connie liked to sit on. It was a hoof-molded bit of Flitter's east-facing windowsill in the bedroom. The cat enjoyed soaking up sun from that position, lazily regarding birds who were flying past too far away for a casual swat, and just generally put a hedonistic note on life. She always sprang up to that resting point in a single casual bound, giving no thought to takeoff or landing. She just did it, and it was amazing to watch. A lesson on what instinct and skill could accomplish when thought didn't get in the way. Flitter had to lift her up.
It's an improvement, darling.
The rain had stopped, at least for the moment. There was enough sun to enjoy, but Connie just lay there. She wouldn't purr, no matter how much Flitter stroked her. Sometimes she made odd sounds. They weren't meows. They could have been pain. They might have been begging. No, the sicko who lived just outside the fringe was making her think that way. The darkness was getting into her head. The disease was fatal. Flitter accepted that. She had heard the words from real vets, and then gone into the Canterlot archives herself for the last confirmation. A condition which was barely understood. Something in the blood. Something wasn't processed properly, possibly ran in family lines. No treatment, no stalling. Just time, and very little of it. But all the time under the sun meant something, even time spent in pain. No desire to hunt, no joy
It needs to
of
be about
food,
20% cooler.
no returning of affection, just existing, barely. She wished Cloud Chaser was with her. She wanted some pony she could talk to, some pony who wasn't the freak. But Cloud Chaser was away, would be for another 2 weeks, had to go visiting.
Or maybe that was just the excuse. Maybe she left. Again.
It's an improvement, darling.
She might never come back. Every pony leaves me, and I leave every pony. Every pony. But not every one. Carney never left me. She wants to take Carney away because she hates me, because she's a failure and a freak, and I know it, and she's punishing me for that the only way she knows how. She wants to kill the only thing in the world which ever completely accepted me for myself.
Flitter had tried to make Connie eat. She had given the cat all her favorite foods. She had purchased the freshest of meat, and the injury to her budget had meant nothing. She'd found wild catnip.
It needs to be about 20%
Nothing
cooler.
had worked. It was water or nothing. and it was barely water today. She had thought about trying to pry the cat's jaws open, force food in, but how? Wings, hooves, neither could act to create such a thing, only horns. Flitter didn't have one, never would, didn't know a single unicorn who would help her. She disliked every unicorn in town, and they felt the same way about her.
I could ask Rarity.
The thought surprised her so much that she brought it closer for better examination.
She has... Oh, what's the cat's name? Opal. Over-pampered fluffball. Probably hates the world because Rarity made her look like an over-pampered fluffball when she just wants to be a hunter. But she loves that cat. You can't have a cat and not love it. And she's a unicorn. She might... help me. You're so old, you're not even into caroxing. No, I take that back. That's not old. That's dead.
It's an improvement, darling.
It had been moons since Twilight Sparkle's lone disastrous attempt at creating the 3-minute date. Flitter wasn't even into Quaraxing anymore.
She would never. She wouldn't. She's so stupid.
The boutique doors opened for them. Rarity listened. Flitter would never remember exactly what she had said, but the designer listened to all of it, and then Rarity let them in. Connie was gently levitated onto a plush cushion, the soft blue field seeming to caress the tortoise-shell fur. Opal calmly walked in, regarded the newcomer, jumped up,
It
and
needs to be
then
about
lay
20%
down
cooler.
next to Connie, softly purring. Rarity said a few things which Flitter didn't want to hear. Words about understanding, living in dread of the same thing happening, knowing that her own lifespan was so much longer than Opal's, that a goodbye would come, and the words were so soft the fake accent barely attached at all, that her duties as bearer could so easily mean that the pony would walk into the Shadowlands first, leaving behind a cat who would never truly understand where her companion had gone. For that, Rarity had made arrangements, a new home waiting, just in case. She spoke about being willing to try, to help as long as her assistants could do anything at all. But she knew the other one. The pony Flitter currently didn't even want to give the grace of a name. And that said pony would never have said such a thing if it hadn't been the only option left. The final kindness. The soft blue field gently held Connie's jaws, made them open. A secondary bubble moved a little fresh fish into the cat's mouth, while a third massaged the throat, creating an automatic swallowing reaction. Connie was eating, and then she threw up.
Get the thread. See the thread? Wanna hunt it? Here, I'll pull it right past your paw. I got this especially for you. You've never had it before, but I thought something new. Please? Please? Please?
She didn't knock. She pushed her way in, and hundreds of eyes stared at her with fresh hate. The blue-green ones looked up from where they had been measuring out medicine. Medicine for a creature who could use it. Medicine which would work.
Do it.
Flitter said, and waited for her soul to die. She had to watch. She had seen Connie hunt. She had loved watching Connie hunt. And part of that was because virtually no pony else ever would. But some had been the movement, the smoothness of muscle play, the joy in the cat's actions, the feline having the time of her life, and then the best part, proudly presenting her best friend with a gift. but it had never been about the thrill of the kill. Flitter didn't want to watch Carney die. She felt she needed to. It was part of her punishment for becoming a murderer. And naturally, Fluttershy didn't want her to.
It'll be what you remember.
Her own voice felt broken. Fluttershy could hear that. Any pony could.
So, what can I do?
Pet her. Tell her you love her.
What?
Repeating herself now, sounding stupider with every word.
What do you do with the body?
That's up to you. Some ponies want to bury. I can help you dig. Or some just leave them for me. And I'll do it if that's what you want.
She lived in the clouds. You can't bury in a cloud.
In a way, she could. The spell would hold, but given enough time, every cloud dissipated. Eventually, Flitter would leave Ponyville, just as she wound up leaving everywhere else. And when that happened, the special touches applied to her home, the ones just about any Pegasus could do, the things which made it stable. Unless somebody else moved in, they would fade in time. The ground was forever.
You do it. Bury her. She came from the ground. Let her go back.
Fluttershy nodded and then left them alone for a while. She petted Connie. She rubbed the fur with her wings. In a whisper she hoped the yellow Pegasus would never hear.
It's an improvement, darling.
She begged for a final purr, and it never came. After a while, she called Fluttershy into the room. The cottage's owner and her cat left it together. Only one came back. She didn't trust. She still felt there was a sickness there. Had to be. How could any pony kill 500 times and not have their soul crushed by it? Flitter had killed once, just a few minutes ago, and it felt as if there was a void below her heart, a pulling one, dragging the rest of her body inside it. Surely the freak would do something to the body, and once Flitter caught her. So she hid in the last place the world's least deserving of the name Pegasus would ever look, above, found a gray cloud and lurked behind it, watched the cottage until Fluttershy came out the back, accompanied by several of her so-called friends, rabbits, and not just that one, badgers, multiple digging species, and 2 raccoons who could just barely totter on their hind legs, while something halfway between their claws and the unnatural minotaur appendage called hands carried. She made herself look. She forced herself to watch.
Please.
Fluttershy said, just barely loud enough to hear. Or maybe Flitter was imagining the word from so high up. The burrowers did just that, and the ground opened. The body was gently lowered, and then covered again. The animals scattered, leaving only Fluttershy looking up at the new disruption to the earth.
You were good for her. She needed a friend, and you gave her that. You were a good cat, I know. She loved you so much.
There was rain scheduled, a misting to close the thunderstorm time, one which would start about half an hour ahead. Pegasi would be coming into the area to cover up the last clear patches. Flitter didn't have all that long before some pony asked what she was doing there, and she couldn't pretend to be working. She'd taken so much time off already, just trying to save.
Carney.
Fluttershy said, and pain radiated from every letter. Then,
Winnowill, Chaser, Fleetfoot,
It needs to be
Garnet,
about 20% cooler.
Midnight.
a long pause. and her tears fell as eyelids scrunched shut.
Leaf. Leaf fall.
500 names. Seconds before the other Pegasi would have arrived, a little after Fluttershy finished, but continued to silently stare at the ground, there was a knock at the cottage door. Flitter turned in that direction and saw a worried-looking dark blue unicorn stallion, field-carrying a visibly sick puppy. Fluttershy looked up at the sound, let the last of the tears drop away, went to do it all again. It was the next day. Sun was back, not that it mattered.
Give me a cat.
No.
It's what you do. You're a booking animal adoption service, and every pony knows it. Give me a cat.
You're not ready.
I want a cat.
And after there's been more time, I'll help you meet one. But not now.
I say when I'm ready, not you. You already got to say enough.
Right now, all you'll see is her. Whoever you take won't be her. And you'll hate what should have been a friend for that. The pain won't go away. Not completely, not ever. But when you don't think of her every hour, when you can look at some pony out with their friend and not hate them for having one, when it's just an ache, come to me. And then I'll introduce you to a friend who needs you. Or a friend you need. But this isn't the time, Flitter.
Don't say my name.
All right.
I want...
No.
They looked at each other for a while,
No.
and Flitter left. The little black and white ball of fuzz yawned hugely and stretched before curling back up and falling asleep. Flitter had named him Killer, which felt like it would be a great name for shaking ponies up with whenever she mentioned it. There would be some time before she could jolt them out of complacency with his hunting prowess, as he was currently most interested in eating, sleeping, and having some pony pay attention to him. But once he started to stretch his lithe muscles a little, she would get him hunting, leash-trained, make sure he never got too close to the edge of a cloud, and that spell had been no cheaper the second time around. She might even teach him which ponies to dislike, although that would have to start early, and naturally she'd start with the bearers. Pinky was still mostly okay, but as for the rest, Flitter disliked Twilight Sparkle for not knowing what power was meant to do, Rainbow Dash for being her employment superior while in no way deserving it, Applejack because honesty should be more than just not lying,
Improvement, darling.
Rarity, generosity shouldn't mean giving of yourself to ponies who had verbally attacked you, should it? But Flitter no longer disliked Fluttershy, not after the Pegasus had matched her to Killer. Flitter hated her. She finally had a reason worth making the effort for. Flitter hated Fluttershy for being the strongest pony in the world.
continues to manipulate said little green man from beyond the grave and leads him to complete all the steps for him to return and grab his finger, or the high school romance drama. I think we know which one is more creative here. Moving away from that, the shipping was originally done really well in this show. For the first 2 seasons, the 2 primary ships were mainly limited to Jarko and Starko. Let's go through each one. Although it was one of the oldest cliches in the book, that being the school crush, Jarko actually offered an incredibly unique and new take on this cliche, and that gave it new life. Remember what I was saying before about Marco being relatable? Well, this is where it shines most. Now, the thing that sets this apart from the usual school crush cliche is how Marco went about the relationship. Marco was shown to have a crush on Jackie Lynn Thomas for a long time in his life. He wrote out a whole plan to eventually get with her. Now, this is something a lot of people, myself included, can relate to. With me, I've liked someone for a few years now, and I even made this whole giant plan to eventually get with them. But just like Marco, I was unable to actually really progress with it. And each step in this ship's progression is surprisingly realistic for a show about a magic girl. Marco eventually having to confess his crush on Jackie was really an intense moment. This relationship has been building up since episode 2. The fact that Marco had to do this as well was a nice touch. Normally, he would have never been able to do that himself, like he wanted to, but he didn't have the courage to do it. And this moment is especially powerful because of Marco's little speech that he gives here.
I told you, I have a crush on Jackie. At least I think I do. But what does that really mean? I put her on this sort of pedestal. So, do I like the image of her or for who she really is? I mean, I like her enough to know that she deserves someone who wants to get to know her, which is definitely me.
Seriously, everything is right about that scene right there. A lot of crushes form, mainly just with the want of getting to know the other person better. And the way that Jackie responds to this is realistic. She doesn't immediately fall head over heels for him, and she doesn't reject him either. She feels unsure, which is a pretty realistic response in that situation. And she's respectful to Marco about it too. She doesn't make fun of him for it. Overall, their interactions are really realistic and relatable. And each step afterwards feels really natural and well-paced. When they finally get together, we see them genuinely happy as a couple. And in Jackie's case, we started out not really knowing a lot about her personality, but as time went on, we saw her develop character. It seemed like her extroverted and casual personality was a perfect opposite to Marco's introverted and worried one. It's like they kept each other centered. On the other hand, we have Starko. Fans started shipping this one since the very start because, boy protagonist and girl protagonist need to get together. But being real for a second, the chemistry between Star and Marco was actually written really well for the first 2 seasons, and they would have worked as a couple. There are some problems though, and I'll get into that mainly in the second section of this video, but right now I'll name a few that pertains to this section. Now this will definitely be brought up later, but even the first 2 seasons, the Blood Moon Curse caused problems. It directly interfered with Marco's current relationship with Jackie, and it's something that neither Star nor Marco really wanted. Essentially, the disqualification factor means that the Starko moments from when the curse was placed to when it was broken don't actually count as consensual Starko moments, because we're unable to tell whether or not the moment was caused by the moon's manipulation. So essentially, in that case, there isn't a lot of concrete establishment for Starko that isn't caused by the Blood Moon. For the first 2 seasons, I actually really liked the ship, but once I realized that the moon was kind of forcing them to be together, I started to back away from them. I shipped Starko during the first 2 seasons, as well as Jarko, and kind of Tomko. Yeah, I was kind of all over the place. I remember thinking I wish that there was a way for all of them to happen.
Again, it's like you want both things to happen, but the show forces you to take a side, and oh god.
Now I regret that statement immensely, but out of all of them, I shipped Jarko the most because it's something that I could actually personally relate to. To conclude, Season 1 and 2's shipping scene was pretty good because of its realistic writing, combined with its well-written and relatable characters. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the various reasons why Star vs. the Forces of Evil used to be great. Now I'm going to pull an Emperor Lemon here and ask you to take a good long look at these reasons while I carefully explain how the writers managed to fuck up every single one of them. Because Star vs. the Forces of Evil fell from grace. Do you remember the strong starts to Season 1 and 2? Yeah, well, let's take a look at Season 3 for a second. Let me just say the Battle for Muni doesn't count as the Season 3 premiere. It was its own separate TV movie that closed up the overarching story from the past 2 seasons. So the actual Season 3 premiere is Scent of a Hoodie. So the episode starts out with Star and Marco saying goodbye, and Star is grieving over this. Makes sense in context. But then we get these really long and awkward sequences of her smelling Marco's dirty hoodie. The The episode is solely dedicated to her not wanting to wash it so she could preserve Marco's scent? Literally in the last episode, the kingdom was in shambles because of Toffee, and this is the follow-up? What is this? Why is this the follow-up? As for season 4's premiere, it was actually really good. We get a 2-part special about what happened to Moon, and we get her back. It gave me a lot of hope for the last season. The comedy was spot on, as usual. It quickly and swiftly wrapped up a plot point, and it even gave a little hint towards Toffee plot. Something that, you'll find out in a bit, is exceptionally rare during these latter 2 seasons. But this is short-lived because it's immediately interrupted by the setup of a Starco moment. Oh yeah, for the last 2 seasons, they decided to ditch the whole overarching story technique midway in favor for a seasonal approach. Essentially, there'll be a different story for each season. This didn't work out so well. You can't just like swap that kind of thing out of nowhere. Like that's literally the structure, the fundamental structure of your show. You can't just change that midway. It's not what the audience is used to, and it doesn't give a lot of time to develop each story. During the overarching story, whenever something important happened, it had much more of an impact rather than when something important happens in the seasonal plot era. And all the change really did was confuse people. In my case, I kept thinking that Toffee was going to return, because we spent a full 2 seasons hyping him up to be the big bad main antagonist, only for it to end with a rushed anticlimactic death that doesn't even make sense continuity-wise. Toffee himself even hinted that it's not over. You can't just like drop that. You can't just leave a thing like that out there and not do anything with it. This also leads into my next point. Nearly everything from the overarching story was forgotten and hardly ever mentioned again. Let's go through a list of times Toffee was mentioned since Battle for Muni. Dave, of all people, mentioned Toffee in Club Snubbed, and Moon and Marco mentioned Toffee in Sweet Dreams. And, those are all the mentions for Season 3. Yikes. For Season 4, Toffee is mentioned again in the premiere by Star. Glosswork suggests that defeating him might have been a mistake. He leaves a Megalodon hint that Toffee may not have actually been evil. Moon references Ludo's killing line to Toffee, and Moon remembers. Toffee appears briefly in Meteor's lesson and establishes what his motive was. It was a war on magic. But really all it ended up doing was raise more questions than it actually answered. And Toffee says his signature, surprise, in Tavern at the End of the Multiverse. That's the last Toffee sighting or mention we ever get. But yeah, the biggest antagonist of the series was hardly mentioned in the last 2 seasons. A lot of people got interested in Star because of the story, myself included. I remember when people were requesting the show and while I was reacting through it, a lot of the things that people would point out is specifically the story and how good it is. You can't take the story that got the majority of the fans interested in the show, scrap it, and then do something completely different. That's just whack. Oh, and by the way, there was a lot of interesting stuff about Toffee dropped in the Magic Book of Spells. Information that definitely should have been introduced in the show, like the fact that Eclipsa used to know and date Toffee, or that Toffee turned around and killed Queen Solaria. So they gave away a lot of information in the book, and what do they do with it?
Nothing!
Also, goodbye Earth. Muni's the main setting now. The audience is used to Earth, and that gets abruptly ripped away and you're thrown into the permanent Muni setting in the most not smooth way possible. We lost the charm that the various Earth background characters bring. Janna is now a rarity, Jackie's completely written out of the show, she's gone. The old intro and outro are gone, and despite the fact that Marco has dimensional scissors and can visit at quite literally any time, we hardly see anything of Earth for 2 seasons straight. The first time we see Earth since sophomore slump is in Marco Jr. The episode highlights how little Marco's parents actually know about him. But yeah, this setting change really wasn't a good idea. The atmosphere in Muni is just so much more bland. Everything's so dull colored, there's non-interesting background characters, there's random classical music that shows up with a lot of the royalty stuff. So, aka a lot of the time. Don't get me wrong, I'm okay with classical music. I dabble a little bit in classical music, but right here, it doesn't work in context of the fun, bouncy atmosphere and music of Season 1 and 2. And for a lot of the first 2 seasons, when we see Muni, it's a total shithole. It shows that things are clearly not run well here, and it has a lot of fundamental problems. It's all mainly used as humor, but then in Season 3, you're thrown into this environment, and they try to fix their societal problems. And speaking of societal problems, oh boy, that's like the main thing of this show for a long time. Essentially, the whole monster-mumin racism plot has been hinted since Season 1, when Star realized that the monsters really had it bad during Independence Day. Civilian monsters are first introduced in Raid the Cave, when monsters start to live in Ludo's abandoned hideout. But even so, here they're introduced as alternative monsters. I'm not entirely sure they intended for monsters to be like regular citizens. But regardless, this certainly wasn't something that came out of nowhere. And when it first really became a plot point in Season 3, Episode 9, I was all for it. I thought it'd be a really interesting plot point. But the thing is, it went on for a really long time. It carries out through Season 4 as well. It literally worsens because of Eclipsa becoming queen. So like take all the stuff from Season 3 had, nope, then now it's worse. Nothing happened, really. I will say, though, one thing is that they definitely did a good job showing things gradually changing. Started out with everyone being upset, except the monsters, and eventually got to the point where everyone was just kinda all good with each other. The racism plot felt realistically paced, but from a storytelling standpoint and what people are watching, it's not really a good idea to drag that kind of thing out. And again, a lot of the build up to the plot was just thrown away at some points where it just gets worse. Thought the issue was fixed? Oops, no, there's more racists. Oh, but now Eclipse is queen, maybe it'll get better. Oh no, everyone's still racist. Oh, look, everyone's happy again. Oh, more racists, and defeating them isn't even gonna help because of the whole thing that happens at the end. This thing went on for 2 full seasons. We could have done with it being a lot shorter. And the only thing that could even be considered overarching from Season 2 is the Eclipsa plot. Honestly, out of everything from the past 2 seasons, I enjoyed the Eclipsa arc the most. Seeing her being proven innocent and finding out about the cover-up was the most interesting part of all this. But I still don't think it quite lived up to the story that we had before. And even this kind of gets thrown away, because after she's proven innocent, the writers go back and forth from hinting she's evil and she's not evil. Like, initially she was hyped up a lot to be evil in Season 2 and 3. But then it's like, nah, she's just a quirky little girl who's innocent and lost her daughter. But maybe she's evil? Nah, don't worry, she's still good.
Maybe.
Seriously, they wasted so much time doing this. Just pick one. Is she whack or not? Any question of it really should have been eliminated in the Butterfly Trap episode. Oh, and speaking of that episode, think about this for a second. What if Eclipsa actually was what she was hyped up to be? What if she was actually evil? Imagine in the Butterfly Trap episode, they don't use the box for the trial. They just use basic questions. After Moon, Eclipsa, and Star confront the Magic High Commission, they determine that they actually did in fact get rid of Eclipsa's daughter. The Magic High Commission is placed under arrest, and Moon and Star hand Eclipsa the wand and the kingdom, because, you know, she's supposed to be queen, and neither Star nor Moon are actual royalty. But once everyone leaves the room, Eclipsa smirks or some shit. Then it's confirmed that she faked the whole thing. Vestivia was her daughter, Meteora never existed, and now the entire kingdom is hers. That would have been a mind-shattering reveal. It would have perfectly lined up with all the hinting of her being evil and manipulative, and would have actually handled the plot holes of the cheek marks. And I'll talk about those cheek marks in a bit. Regarding the cheek marks, that's a big enough thing that it's going to have its own mini-section. But while we're on the topic, it's also worth mentioning that they established that Marco can do magic and has crescent moon cheek marks in Season 3. His cheek marks are the exact same as Selena's. She was one of the queens that they specifically pointed out in Into the Wand. There could have been a lot of story potential with this connection, like if Marco was actually part of the Butterfly family. But instead, the writers ignored it and used it mainly as a Starco mechanic. Although if Marco was actually related to the Butterfly family, that would make the whole Blood Moon thing and Starco in general pretty weird. Definitely wouldn't be the first time that kind of twist would be pulled, though. Oops! Oh yeah, speaking of the Blood Moon, it kinda sucked as a writing decision in general. By the writers having a plot point like this, it really only dug them into the rabbit hole. It prevented the 2 main characters from being happy in their other relationships, and it prevented the writers from actually establishing Starco while the curse was still active, because then that wouldn't be consensual, and that would be... In the end, it really only made the writers scramble to A, break the curse after it was almost completely ignored by the main characters for 4 seasons, B, break up 2 perfectly healthy relationships, and C, rush their favorite ship getting together. To summarize, Season 3 and 4's seasonal story approach really only led to underdeveloped and uninteresting plot points. The setting change really only made the show lose a big part of why people enjoyed it, and the complete discardal of the previous story only caused confusion and disappointment. Remember all that stuff about seasonal plot structures causing underdeveloped stories and stuff? Surprise! Underdeveloped stories means underdeveloped antagonists. Because now we get a new antagonist for each season. All the old antagonists? Nah, they literally do not exist anymore. Remember how Ludo became a literal god and 100% actual threat in Season 2? Whoops, he gets jack shit after Battle for Muni. He's seen briefly floating in the void in Sweet Dreams, then eventually he finally gets an episode that solely follows him. It highlighted more on Ludo's family issues. It also shows how that affects Dennis, and it establishes that Ludo is going through some mental problems. And even after we think we get a bit of closure, they sneak in a little hint that he's still insane and he's gonna possibly attack Star and Marco. Are the writers gonna ever bring that up again?
No!
Eventually, after a long time, he gets a single follow-up episode in Season 4. It shows him trying to move away from his past. The episode ends with him rekindling with his siblings to rebuild their family home. Honestly, I wish they focused more on Ludo's arc here. Trust me when I say this would have been more interesting than the large majority of Season 3 and 4. And with Toffee, you already heard me say that they never mention him again, which genuinely sucks. There were so many things about him that still needed to be answered. They did pull something nice at the end though and confirm that he was right all along, kind of. But even though he was right in the end, he's the only antagonist that didn't get off the hook. Meteora gets off the hook after killing the entire kingdom because she was turned into a little baby. Mina gets off the hook after threatening mass genocide because of... Why didn't we just kill her again? And Moon gets off the hook because she's Ma, and we can't kill Ma. But not Toffee. No, he's dead. And it sucks because Toffee had the most potential. I mean, especially if you take in consideration his boss. Oh wait, you didn't know?
Oh, what a concept!
If you didn't know already, in the official Magic Book of Spells, a Septarian named Seth was depicted. He was revealed to be behind the whole rebellion against the Monster King, and he led the war on magic and humans. Basically, Seth is the motivation for Toffee to kill Queen Comet and Queen Solaria. Seth is behind all of this. He would have made a fantastic endgame villain. This is an absolutely crucial part of the backstory, and the show failed to mention Seth even once. Why would you give away such big information in your book and then not do anything with it? And no, this isn't a simple fun fact. The overlord behind Moon and Eclipse's mother's deaths is not a fun fact. This is serious shit, and it plays directly into the overarching story that we had. This would have been the best continuation of the story, and they did nothing with it. And also, for a full half of Season 3, we go without an antagonist. We have the running plot of Star trying to fix Muni's societal problems, but that isn't really all that interesting. And again, it ran for way longer than it needed to. The other plot is Star opening up portals while she's sleeping, and in the end, we didn't even fully understand why that was happening. We never figured that out. And that plot didn't continue after the mid-finale. And same thing with Season 4. There was like no antagonist until midway. For both of these seasons, 2 halves went antagonist free. That's literally a whole new full season where nothing happened. But as for the villains that we did get, well, here they are. She started out as a simple villain who aimed for Marco, much like how Ludo aimed for Star. However, once we learn the dark truth of her past, she becomes a walking apocalypse. One thing I like about Meteora is how she ties in with the Eclipse arc, which, again, is one of the only interesting things about Season 3 and 4, and how it cleared up stuff from the overarching story. However, looking at Meteora overall, she was a really flat villain. Her primary motive was throne mine, I go get throne now. And she essentially just killed everyone in her way to do that, which is a complete 180 from Toffee. The thing about Toffee is that his motives were complex and interesting. He carefully planned out every single move he would make, and he's a master of manipulation. And despite him having regenerative powers, Toffee was just a guy. A semi-retired war general guy, but a guy nonetheless. He didn't have some insane strength. Like, it seemed like he had some sort of power outside of the regeneration, but the writers most likely forgot about that. And his arm gets blown off within a full 5 seconds of Star entering the room. Not even any of Ludo's army was ever hurt that bad. The most powerful part of Toffee was his 2 million IQ brain. Meteora was a brainless, power-hungry monster. She didn't have a plan, and this really made her uninteresting as a villain. And then in Season 4, we get Mina. This is the decided endgame villain, not Seth, not even Toffee again, Mina Loveberry. I guess they did an okay job of tying this into the racism story that dragged on for 2 seasons. Her character was at least consistent. From the very beginning, she was always the mad monster killer. But again, why is she the endgame villain? To be fair, there definitely was a lot of potential for a redemption arc. She was once a regular person. She only got corrupted due to the Solarian magic. They could have played with this idea to make the audience sympathize with Mina despite her radical views, but they didn't. They didn't do that. And they definitely could have utilized the Demon Bird more. Like, come on, that shit was terrifying, and we only saw it in action in Junk and Jaina. But no, she ends up being a lackluster final villain, tied in with a shitty plot twist. Oh, and about that plot twist, there's actually one more antagonist that we didn't cover yet. This plot twist was really dumb and it makes no sense. Here's why. Moon still distrusts Eclipsa despite having a gradual introduction to the new additions after losing her memory, bonding over various activities, and after Eclipsa profusely and genuinely apologized for what happened. Moon even accepts the apology wholeheartedly. Moon knew how much helping Eclipsa meant to Star, so why would she A, ruin that for her, and B, put her daughter in mortal danger to the point where she and her friends literally almost died. Moon claimed she kept me away from my family to try to justify betraying her, even though she was canonically completely ignorant to it during that time and it would have made absolutely no difference. And Eclipsa only wanted her daughter to not be killed. And last time I recall, Moon was the one that opened up the portal and fled through there. Eclipse had no idea that would happen. And you say that, but Eclipse had been kept away from her family for 300 years, you asshole. Moon knew how bad the Solarian times were and literally explained that to Mina in Ghost of Butterfly Castle, which is the episode that classifies Mina as an antagonist. She turned down her offer right then and there. Moon being fucking lazy this whole season completely contradicts her overly responsible nature we've seen over the past 3 seasons. Even River was confused as to why she was choosing not to stop her. And she could have at least told Star about it, knowing that she's living in the castle where Mina's planning to attack. That's your daughter. And also Moon was talking about Mina like it was only her doing shit. There was no we. Moon harboring an army of racists and doing nothing about it goes against her developments in Season 3, where she realized monsters are just regular people too. Moon weaponizing an army of racists is even worse in that context. Moon having her own little group where she teaches them how to provide for themselves was actually a really good idea. For the entire show now, we've only seen the citizens of Muni just being dumb blockheads who can't actually do anything for themselves. So this idea would have worked. Instead, it was just used as a pawn in a shitty plot twist. Coronation, Hekapu, and Omni are pissed when Romulus confesses to breaking Globgor out, and they brought up logical reasons why. And they were also surprised when Eclipsa announced that Globgor escaped. That wouldn't have happened if they were in cahoots with Moon. They would have already knew. And they wouldn't still be talking about Romulus going to jail even when no one else is watching. Even in Dupe Dupe, she even says how she doesn't want to change a single thing about life. She says there's a beautiful simplicity to living in a yurt. So why would she uproot everything to try to take back the throne out of nowhere? Also, there's no way they could have gotten all that armor. That's like real. That's not magic or anything. That's real armor. And seeing how long it took Mina to get her full set, I highly doubt they just found 100 pre-made sets of it lying around. And this one, Moon claims by doing this, she stopped Mina from doing far worse. Like what, Moon? Like, genuinely, I want to know what she fucking meant by this. What could be so worse that you had to intervene by giving her an entire army of racists with god powers? Literally, what could have Mina have done? Eclipsa used the darkest spell and insta-killed Dug Dug. What would have been the difference if Mina was actually in there? The threat would be over like that. Moon has been shown to be one of the most level-headed characters throughout the show, and she apparently wasn't smart enough to consider the possibility of the army with extremely racist beliefs turning against her when she tells them not to be racist. Also, Moon didn't even have the Book of Spells. How did she know how to create the warriors? Did her past self just decide to memorize a spell like that? Just in case? So yeah, there's our antagonists. At this point, it literally would have just been easier to continue the overarching story and have Seth as the endgame villain. But yeah, now for the big category. Okay, I'm gonna level with you guys for a second. I'm not sure if this can actually be compiled into an actual structured thing, so I guess let's just go down the line here. This is going to cover the entire show, whether it be stuff that they forgot from the first 2 seasons or just stuff that doesn't make sense in context. Essentially, this category is just a dump of problems with the show. Here we go! Monster Arm had hinted that he would never be gone, yet he never actually ends up returning. It was hinted again in the Season 1 and Season 3 finale, but again, he never returned. Darren had said in the Ask Me Anything that the Monster Arm still lives inside of Marco, despite magic being destroyed at the end. Like, fully sentiently lives in there. It's not like Romulus or Omni or the puppies, it's just regular Monster Arm in there, and that kind of makes no sense. River and Star didn't know what a toilet was. Normally that would imply they don't have sewage systems in Muni, but Star also said humans put things in there, implying humans don't even shit. But then toilets are shown to be existing things in Battle for Muni. Star's family in Flag Day doesn't align with her family depicted in the Magic Book of Spells. Moon apparently has an aunt, so why didn't she become queen when Queen Comet was killed? Why did Moon automatically become queen? Speaking of the Book of Spells, it's stating that the old Book of Spells was burned. That's why all the past queens aren't shown. So what happened to Glossaric with that then? And no, there aren't 2 Glossarics. It was confirmed in Meteor's lesson that the Glossaric that we know was the one that gave the first wand to the first queen. In the book, it's stated that he's on vacation, and that's how he didn't die. And that makes no sense. Glossaric is literally tied with the book. It doesn't matter if you're on vacation or not. If the book dies, you die. There's no way around it. Buffrog saying must warn Star was only used as a joke in Raid the Cave. He's illiterate, so Star couldn't read his letter. But, like, he has her number and dimensional scissors. He literally could have just told her in person, especially considering the circumstances of Ludo attacking and taking over Butterfly Castle. Star's spellbook is hardly actually brought up again, it's just kind of forgotten. Hekapu says that she forges all dimensional scissors to those that earn them. So how does Ludo have them? Or Buffrog? Or anyone? If Marco didn't earn those scissors after like 10 days of trying in the Never Zone, how the hell did anyone else get them? He spent 16 years getting those. Moon is so hesitant to give Toffee his finger, but it's never shown why. It's not like he gained some extreme power from it, he just reformed from it and walked away. Toffee's knowledge of Star and the royal family goes unexplained.
It needs to be about
Toffee was shown to
20%
have some
core.
emotional connection to the Great Monster Massacre. This was never covered or played with. Marco's nightmare had no closure to it. It seemed to foreshadow stuff about Toffee and the Blood Moon, but nothing came of it. Father Time warns about freezing time and potentially breaking it. This either could have been a foreshadowing thing or just an excuse for Star not to use the spell again to solve real problems later in the series. Also, they never explained how Bird and Spider returned after being sent to Brita's Tacos. They just kind of show up on Muni without any question. Eclipse's chapter was hinted to be really serious and dangerous, but later on they make it like it was just controversial magic. And they completely forgot about the effects the chapter had on Marco and Ludo/Toffee. And speaking of, they forgot about the hints that Toffee was connected to both Marco and Star. More on that is on my own separate theory video. The Whispering spell is completely different in Cleaved than it is everywhere else. Like seriously, the spell was only used 2 other times. You couldn't have just like looked up clips on YouTube of it. And yes, the old Whispering spell had words to it, and you were able to tell what it was saying. There's really no reason to go and change it like that. It seems like more was going to be done with the whole Moon story arc. River's staff in the intro is a crescent moon. Marco's cheek marks are a moon. Combine this with Eclipse's dad telling Marco to go to the ball. Queen Selena's cheek marks were crescent moons. I feel like more was going to be done with it. Oh yeah, about Eclipse's dad. In Blood Moon Ball, while sitting around in Star's room, the painting of the sailor, who is revealed in the book to be Eclipse's dad, speaks to Marco and advises him to go to the ball. Why though? No, like literally why? That's never explained. That was never explained. What was the reasoning behind Eclipse's dad telling Marco Diaz, a random schmuck from Earth, to go to the Blood Moon Ball so he'd get his soul forcefully bound with his friend, which he had little to no romantic interest in? And before you say Marco was just interested in Star, let me tell you why that's bullshit. The only moments that could even remotely be considered Stark are before the Blood Moon Ball, or in episode 4A with just a nice little look, and episode 6A, which is Muberty, and it's Marco's and Star's interactions here. But that literally makes it indifferent because Star was literally attracted to anything that had a dick, and Star's interest in Marco ceased after that. And even after the Blood Moon, Marco didn't show any interest in Star until season 3. And hold on, allow me to define a Starco moment real quick. A Starco moment does not count as, they talked and they had a nice moment. Friends can do that. Literally anyone can do that. It doesn't mean that they're in love with each other. And their relationship for like 90% of the show is under the context of being friends. A Starco moment counts as either party showing romantic interest towards the other, like how it works anywhere else. That being said, here's the Starco timeline until Marco started showing interest in her. Season 2, episode 9A, Star's crush is revealed. Doesn't seem like she even fully realizes it though. She seems happy for Marco that he progressed his relationship with Jackie. The box was the one that confirmed it. And how do we know Marco didn't have a crush on Star at this point? The box literally confirmed that Marco was telling the truth when he said he had a crush on Jackie. Even gave him props for it. So we can confirm that Marco did in fact not have any romantic interest towards Star, otherwise the box would have called him out for it. Star begins to be jealous over Marco from Bon Bon up to the season finale, where her crush is revealed to him, and then she leaves Earth. Season 3, episode 8A, Star whines about Marco's hoodie losing his scent, and Marco gets the hoodie back and likes that it smells like Star. In a sophomore slump, Marco becomes obsessed with Star and Uni and gets dumped by Jackie. When he arrives in Uni and Lint Catcher, Star wants no part of him, as she's already dating Tom now. Marco tries swoosing in, but gets friend-zoned. So Marco only started to show romantic interest in Lint Catcher. But yeah, moving on. Selena is the only queen shown in Into the Wand that didn't really get covered. What were her secrets? Gloucester comes back to life after Star threw a random piece of the book that she apparently had into the magic sanctuary. And her having that piece of the book makes no sense because we saw the book be completely burned on screen. There was no corner piece to that in sight. The only explanation to her having that thing is that they found it when they were searching the remains of the monster temple, even though the whole thing was burned on screen. So yeah, Gloucester returns, but he can only say Globgore. He says that for the whole fucking season. He's done things like beat the shit out of Star in Nightlife and destroyed her room in the same episode, acted like an actual animal for the whole season, and in the end it's played off as a punchline. He had full mental capability that all that time he was just trying to tell her for months. This is a huge fucking problem. Don't pull that shit with one of the most important characters in the show. Evidently, Gloucester's voice actor was accused of getting all touchy-touchy, so they fired him real quick. But it seems like that threw off some plans for Gloucester's character. So they must have like stalled the situation by pulling this stunt. which kinda sucks. Literally take all the time you need to figure that out. Literally no one's rushing you, we'll understand. Regarding the whole evil Eclipsa tease, here's some moments that show that the writers were still hinting this. In Eclipsa's first real episode, Stranger Danger, Moon says, "It's complicated. Eclipsa can be very convincing." When Star asks why everyone's against her, Moon recognizes that she thought the same way when she first met her. That's never explained, neither is this quote. She also said she can get in your head and make you do things that you don't want to do. Again, nothing came of that. What did she do that happened like that? She had also given seemingly shifty